What is up, everybody? My name is Horace. Welcome back to the channel. Today is a brand new video. And before we do anything, I gotta say thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers. Means a lot. We hit it on stream when we were recapping the Laine trade, so if you want to check that out, that'd be much appreciated. It was a very fun reaction. We hit 1,000 subs 3 times, technically. So, yeah, if you guys could go check that out, that'd be appreciated. It was a very fun stream. And, of course, recapping the Laine trade was also very fun. Today, we are here to do something related to Patrik Laine. We are going to be doing the Habs lineup predictions for the start of the 24-25 season, at least. So you're not going to see Raphael Hurd-Pinard in this lineup because he's out for, I believe it's 4 or 5 months with the broken leg that he suffered during training. Yeah. Now, do I acknowledge that we're still kind of way too early to be talking about lineup predictions? Yes, training camp has not gone underway yet. We haven't seen what anybody looks like in preseason. We haven't seen how Doc's recovering from his ACL and MCL injuries. We don't know what Patrik Laine, how he's doing on the ice yet. We don't know how some of the young kids like Wall and Kapanen might be playing against other possible NHLers. We don't know any of that yet. However, that's the fun in this. Doing these a month early and being completely wrong when Josh Anderson is inevitably on the second line to start the season. Now, with that being said, of course, these are just my line of predictions. If you guys want to give yours, go ahead in the comments down below. That'd be greatly appreciated. I'm not going to waste any more time and keep blabbering on. I tend to do that enough already. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the forwards, go lines 1 through 4, go to the defense 1 through 3. The goaltenders, and I'm actually at the end going to give a couple players to look out for that could possibly make the team out of camp or potentially be the first call-ups. We'll talk about those for anyone who might not know one or two of the guys that are there. So now, I will say for the first line, these two guys that are on the wing, they can switch. This is just how I have them because that's how they played for a vast majority of the time last year. So first line, left wing, obviously, Cole Caulfield. It's going to be Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky, of course. There's no way that line gets separated until, at the very least, potentially, Michkov breaks that line up, potentially. Again, I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know if it will. But I could understand if it happens. But yeah, Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky, of course. Caulfield with all three of these guys, by the way, playing all 82 games last year. Caulfield with 28 goals and 65 points. Suzuki, 33 goals and 77 points, leading the charge for the Habs. And then Slafkovsky with a near breakout 20-goal, 50-point season. He had a fantastic second half of the season, like a lot of Canadians did. Caulfield as well. The three guys, they've got chemistry. We know what they're like together. They're incredible forwards. They're going to be one of the best lines in the NHL for the next, at minimum, decade. So yeah, Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky, absolutely love these guys, and I loved seeing them together, and I can't wait to see what they do this year. Yeah, not really much of a hot take there. There's not really going to be many hot takes here. I don't force those out. For those new viewers, I'm a little nervous, admittedly, filming this. I'm a little nervous doing a video like this with as many new subscribers as we have. On the second line, now, of course, we will have a new acquisition. Now, whether he plays on the left side or the right side, what they do with that, I have no clue. But again, these are predictions. These are what I think is going to happen. The second line left wing is Alex Newhook. The center, Kirby Dach. And the right wing, the new acquisition, Patrik Laine. You guys can tell I am still ecstatic days after it's happened. The Montreal Canadiens have Patrik Laine. I can't believe it. Now, Newhook actually also had a career like the best season that he's had in his career so far. I don't want to call it a career year. But he had 15 goals and 34 points in just 55 games last year. He showed chemistry with Dach and Slav when they were playing together for that game in a period before Dach got hurt last year. Dach, who, by the way, only played 2 games. He did have 2 assists, though, so technically you could say it's his best season in his career because it's his only point per game season so far. But yeah, no, definitely not his best career year. That's hopefully going to be this year. So I could understand if they switch Slav and Laine maybe, but I think they want to have 2 pure snipers kind of apart on separate lines to give that top six more lethality. They could maybe switch Laine and Caulfield, but I don't think they would want to do that. I think they'd want to keep the chemistry together. And then Laine, who's kind of similar to Slav, at least in the body build a little bit. I think Slav is a little more lanky. I think there's potential there for that line on the second line to really, really blend. Again, Laine as that pure sniper, Doc as that kind of two-way guy, sort of more or less, I'd say offensive two-way guy. He can shoot and he can pass. And Newhook as the more straightforward two-way guy. He's not super noticeable all the time, but that usually means he's doing a good job. And I think all three of these guys could be incredible together, assuming that Doc doesn't get hurt, Laine doesn't get hurt all that much, and Newhook is able to stay a little more healthy than he was last year. Only 55 games, which is not horrible, but you'd want to see ideally 65 to 70 at minimum. So, yeah. Now, for anyone who might be wondering, well, Harry, what do you predict for these lines? I'm not doing that in this video. That's going to be a future video coming up, hopefully in the next week or two. So, it's something I really got to think about. I kind of threw these together because, like, these make sense to me. This is what I think is going to happen. So, for the third line now, and I will say Laine as well in Columbus last year, 18 games, he had 6 goals, 9 assists, missed a lot of time in the first half of the year with injuries, and then second half he spent a lot of time in the Players Assistance Program, of course, so that's why he only played the 18 games, so don't be worried, don't be startled that, oh my god, our second line, 2 of the guys have a combined 20 games played last year. No, it's not that much to worry about, I don't think, at least. On the third line, I had a little bit of a thought process to this, and I'll explain in a second, because I do think this could potentially change, but I think it should be Yoel Armia on the left wing, Christian Dvorak down the middle, and Brendan Gallagher on the third line right wing spot. Now, I will say, I could potentially see Josh Anderson on this line. They move Gallagher to the left wing and put Anderson at the right wing. I could potentially see that if they want to get Anderson going, they want to get him, they want to try and get him pumped up before they inevitably move him at the deadline for a 4th round pick. But I don't think he's playing on that third line. He had a really bad season. We'll get into that when we talk about him on the 4th line. Spoiler. Armia, he had a really, really good year last year. He got sent down to Laval after a cold start. He played 8 games there with 6 goals and 9 points. Very nice. He got with a sports trainer or athletic trainer, something like that, to help him out. And it really helped him in 66 games last year. He had 17 goals, 8 assists, 25 points, which might not sound like anything special, but the fact that this guy probably would have put up 20 goals, 25 goals if he does play the whole year and, say, doesn't need to get sent down first, he probably puts up at least 20. That's pretty good depth right there. Now, do I think Armia is going to come in and put up a 20-goal year? Probably not. He's more of probably a 15-10 kind of guy. I think I like Armia. I've always liked him as a third-line guy. He's a good two-way forward. He's pretty good defensively. At least last year he was, especially on the penalty kill. I thought he was quite solid. Dvorak, at this point, he's a third-line center. He's very defensively minded. He doesn't put up a ton of points. In 30 games last year, just 9 points, 5 goals. But he's another of those guys where, the less you hear about him, the less you really notice him, the more he's doing a good job on the ice. Unless you're specifically, of course, looking for him and watching him. He's a very good shadow player, to put it in fantasy hockey manager terms. He's a very good shadow player, looking after some of the top guys on the other team, typically. And Brendan Gallagher, horrible first half, great second half. I think he does get rewarded here with third line ice time. Weirdly enough, especially after coming back from that suspension, and I find it funny as well, Gallagher's first fully healthy season basically in 4 or 5 years, and the only games he misses isn't because of injury, it's because of a suspension, which is kind of funny. But since returning from the suspension, he really did turn it on. He played very well. Hopefully he comes into camp with that same mentality. Hopefully he's able to play up to what we want out of Brendan Gallagher at this stage in his career, as we're kind of winding down the Gallagher era into a cup contending era. I think Gallagher does get rewarded again for his good play last year. And for the fourth line. The fourth line, I think, is kind of obvious at this stage. I know there's some people that are thinking, Harry, where's this one specific guy? We'll get to him, don't worry. But my fourth line, and we're going to start from the right wing this time, we have Josh Anderson, of course, Jake Evans, obviously, and you know what? If you told me a year ago that I would want this guy in the lineup, I would have called you crazy and banned you from my chat. Michael Pezzetta. Michael Pezzetta is in my opening night lineup for the Canadiens. Now, of course, we have another big bad enforcer that we'll get to. You could argue we have two, actually, on the blue line. Again, we'll get to them. But especially if you're playing teams like Toronto and Boston back-to-back in your opening first two games of the year, which kind of pretty good scheduling, actually. I really like that, back-to-back games like that. The Michael Pezzetta needs to be in the lineup. He's a good grinder. I really liked his evolution of his game last year. He's a guy, funny enough, he actually technically had a worse year last year. He had, in 61 games, he only had 3 goals compared to his 7 the year before. He had 12 points and 59 penalty minutes. But I think his defensive game and his overall just physicality worked out a lot better. He wasn't going for hits 99% of the time and leaving guys open. He was very much, he was very careful, playing a little more defensive hockey and throwing the body when he knew it was necessary. He got smarter, I think, over that last offseason, and I hope that it continues in this offseason, that he continued to learn and develop his game further. I could see Pezzetta putting up, I'll say that I'm not giving really predictions, but I could see him putting up another 6-7 goals, maybe 15 points. I could see him going on a little bit of a hot streak for like 4 or 5 games where he's got maybe like 3-4 points. He's playing very well. I could see that this season, him having a small little hot streak like that. He deserves it. Jake Evans, fantastic defensive forward. I think he's incredibly underrated. Even offensively, he's a little bit underrated. In 82 games last year, he had 7 goals, 28 points, nearly 30 points. Granted, yeah, a lot of the time he was playing third line because Dvorak was injured, but still, I really liked Evans. Honestly, if the Canadiens did move Dvorak, and of course they still could, if they moved Dvorak, then yeah, I think Evans would actually work really well as the third line center until we're waiting for Michael Hage, Owen Beck, Philip Mazar, these guys. And if they do, I will say I think you straight move Evans up. I don't think any changes about the third line. And that's actually another reason I forgot to mention is with Josh Anderson, I could see him being third line because Armia and Evans have really good chemistry together, especially last year and in the bubble playoffs. I feel like they were really good together. I know there's that Finnish line of oh god, I'm trying to remember who it was. I know it was Armia. I think it was Kotkaniemi, Armia, and Lehkonen that were on that third line, the Finnish line. But ever since then, it feels like Evans and Armia have kind of been attached. So it actually wouldn't surprise me if they do end up going with switching Armia and Anderson on the third and fourth line. Or hell, again, if they move to Dvorak, you just move Evans straight up. You use a guy that I'll mention a little bit later in the fourth line. But yeah, as I stand right now, these are probably what I'd have as my opening night forward lines. You've got a very solid offensive top 6 with guys who can also defend, and a good bottom 6 with a couple guys who can score, Armia and Gallagher. And you've got very good defensive forwards with Dvorak and Evans. And then you've got your generic fourth-line grinders in Pezzetta. And you got a guy who robs the Canadiens blind until he decides to give a shit halfway through the year for about 10 games and then doesn't for the rest of the year, and Josh Anderson, of course. So yeah, those again are my forward lines. We're going to get to the defensive lines in a second. Yeah, I was going to try and make a point about these Habs are good, but you guys already know that, so let's move on to the defensive lines. Alright, now as for my defensive pairings, I'll admit I'm kind of going with what everybody else is feeling, just because it kind of makes sense to go with this. It really is kind of the forward lines where you can balance out different things. So my first pairing is going to be, of course, Mike Matheson on the left side and Caden Gooley on the right side, of course. Matheson had a fantastic year last year. In all 82 games, he put up 62 points a game. No, he put up 62 points in the 82 games. Of course, a career season for him. I will say right away, I don't expect him to hit the 60 points again. However, that's not because he isn't good. It's just because there's a lot more offensive defensemen that he could pass to. Specifically a guy on the second pair and a guy that potentially comes into the third pair. We'll talk about him in a minute. But Matheson, I still think could have a good 45, 50-point season. He's solid offensively. Defensively, a little bit not good at times. There's other times he at least makes an effort, but that's why you pair a guy like Caden Gooley with him, which is kind of ironic because usually you'd pair the offensive young gun with the veteran veteran defender, but this time it's opposite. But yeah, Caden Gooley, big fan of Ghouls. He's a great defensive defenseman. He has a little bit of offense as well in 70 games. He only put up 6 goals, 22 points, but that's a career high. And again, he's like 22. He'll have a 35, 40-point year more than likely. He's got a Weber-esque slap shot. He's fantastic with that. Great eye for the game. And yeah, it will not surprise me whatsoever if Caden Gooley is a second pairing constant on our team, more so because of the talent that's above him rather than his own lack of talent. You get what I mean. But for now, he's up with Matheson, and he'll get a good chance to prove himself. The second pairing, of course, I think we all know what this is going to be. Of course, on the right side, David Savard, and he is going to be paired, of course, with the future Calder winner, Laine Hutson, of course. Now, come on. We can kind of see this coming, right? Hutson was paired with Savard, I believe, in the 2 games that Hutson played. He had the 2 assists. Hutson, to me, I think immense potential with this kid. He has Cale Makar 2.0 written all over him. And of course, in BU last year, he played 38 games, 15 goals. He had 49 points total. Fantastic. He's a guy that his deking ability and his vision for the ice, his hockey IQ, will make him deadly with a guy like David Savard, who's fantastic defensively, not afraid to get physical. He'll step up for the guys. Savard, fantastic stay-at-home defenseman, which allows Laine Hutson to kind of go up there and, join the play with the forwards, especially if he's playing with the top 6. Like, God, I'm getting chills due to how fun this lineup could be. Yeah, Laine Hutson. And of course, he's going to be fantastic. He's going to put up at minimum 45 points this year, more than likely. And Savard, of course, he can pot in a goal or 2 once a month. He has it in his contract. Once a month, he has to pull off a really nice deke and score. Fellow Habs fans, that might be the first time they're hearing something like this are thinking, yes, you got it with Savard. You're welcome. So yeah, Hutson, Savard, kind of a no-brain second pairing. And the third pairing is going to be a bit interesting because obviously on the left side, you've got Arbor Jacki. He's going to be there no matter what. Arbor Jacki, the sheriff in town, waiting for his little deputy, Florian, to... All right, well, little. He's like 6'3", but he's an inch shorter, so Arbor can call him his little deputy. But waiting for the deputy, Florian, to come up in a couple years. Of course, Arbor, who did end up getting sent down to Laval last year to work on his defensive game, came back up. Very much did mature his game. He very much got better defensively. Even offensively, there's a little bit of upside there. You can shoot the puck literally through the net. In 44 games with the Habs, he had 3 goals, 10 points, and 81 penalty minutes. That's on pace for like 160-something, 150 throughout a full year, which I'm hoping we see that of Arbor Jacki. Of course, hopefully his 2 shoulders are fine. He was apparently playing with... I forget if it was dislocated or just an injured shoulder throughout apparently a decent part of the end of the year. So I don't like to see that, but I do hope that he gets back to form and Jacki gets back to punching faces, putting pucks through the net, and eventually, occasionally, celebrating a goal with Cole Caulfield. And then on the right side, I do have 2 options because, of course, we all know Jaden Struble. He was Jacki's partner last year. Great physical, defensive 2-way defenseman. He can stop goals. He can put a couple in. He got 3 last year with the Canadiens. As well, like Arbor Jacki, actually, funny enough, 3 goals, 7 assists, and 10 points. 57 penalty minutes on 56 games. He's got a mean streak to him, does Jaden Struble. But Struble is kind of almost the shoe-in, it feels like, for a lot of Canadiens fans. However, there is talk right now that Logan Mailloux is going to be the guy that comes out of camp with that third line right D spot, and Struble, because I believe he is waiver exempt, he could get sent down to Laval, work on his game a little bit, which wouldn't surprise me, honestly. It wouldn't surprise me, mostly because we do have so many good defensemen. I know the obvious thought is, well, send down Mailloux, let Jacki and Struble work together. When Jacki went down to Laval, he played with Mailloux, and they had really good chemistry, so... And, I'll say this. I don't think Struble gets sent down. I think they do double duty in a way. I believe, for example, the first 2 games of the year, it's a home game against Toronto, and the next night, it's a game in Boston. it wouldn't surprise me if Mailloux, for example, gets the game against the Leafs, and then Struble gets the game against Boston. They get the game against the more physical team. Struble gets the game against the more physical team. And now, funny enough, I say this despite Mailloux being like 6'3", 220 pounds, but he's a kid. I get Struble's only a year or two older, but he's had those 56 games. He knows what to expect from the NHL at this point. I think if you give Mailloux more games against offensive-driven teams, more kind of maybe grindy teams, not teams that will full-out hit you like Boston and Philly and these teams, I think if at first you give him those offensive games and then drive him into those physical games, I think that would make a little more sense, and then eventually you probably send Struble down, or you just use him as an extra D like Justin Barron. That's not saying I don't like Struble. No, I love Struble, and if he made the team over Mailloux, I'd understand it. Give him a year, and then if Savard walks or whatever, you got Struble and Mailloux, that's completely fine by me. But you get what I mean. But it wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of shift them in and out for one another. Mailloux, who last year, great season. In one game with the Canadiens, he had a point, he had an assist, and Laval, that's where he really, really shined. 72 games, he had 14 goals and 47 points. Looked really, really good throughout a majority of the year. So Mailloux, I could see him stealing that spot from Struble. As well, he does have a bit of a mean streak as well. There was one time in the OHL where I remember where some guy ran his goalie and immediately Mailloux went in there, grabbed the guy, fucking threw him on the ice, cross-checked him a bit. He's not afraid to get physical, Mailloux. He's a kid he's a big boy. Again, 6'3", 6'4", 220 pounds. He's a big boy. He's not afraid to hold his own up there. And I think he'll be able to, but like I said, it wouldn't surprise me just to kind of get him started. They play him with the offensive and then develop him with defensive-driven teams. It wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, or physical teams, you know what I mean. And now, of course, the goaltending, we'll mention it here, of course. It's Montembeault and Primo. There's no way. I was going to try and drive something where, maybe Connor Hughes could maybe get a couple games. No, he's an AHL goalie. Yeah, he's down there with Jakub Dobesh, and yeah, I want to see Connor Hughes just because it'd be fun to see 4 guys named Hughes in the NHL at the same time, but it's not going to happen. Maybe a couple games at the end of the year, 1 or 2, if the Habs are either clearly clinched in the playoffs or they're out of it, maybe they give him a call up just like, hey, have a game in the NHL. You deserve it. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not, but that'd be fun. Monty, of course, right now the starter. He played 41 games last year. He had a 3.14 goals against average and a 903 save percentage, which for a bottom 5 team in the NHL, not horrible. Pretty solid, actually. And Caden Primo, who I actually said in a Talking Habs video, or a Don't Book With Media, video, which you guys should go check out. I have a podcast with those guys. 2 of them are on, one of them's on Talking Habs, one of them's on Don't Book With Media, one of them's on this channel, that one's Movie Talk. If you want the hockey podcast, go check out the other 2 channels. I mentioned that Caden Primo could steal some starts away from Montembeault and be the starter for a decent part of the year. He had a great second half, especially March. He was fantastic in March. And even in April, he played 5 games, barring like 2 games, he was very, very good. And in 23 games last year, he had a 2.99 goals against average and a 910 save percentage, so definitely got better once the 3-goalie rotation was over with and Jake Allen had gotten traded to Jersey, which makes sense. None of the 3 goalies seemed like they liked the 3-goalie rotation. Maybe Monty, just because he was still clearly the starter, but yeah. So that's the defense and goaltending parents. And now, before we do depart, because I know we are already 20 minutes into the video, I would like to talk about a couple players that you should be looking out for. We'll get you over that in just a second. Alright, so like I said, we're going to talk about a couple players to look out for, whether these be players that somehow make it out of camp, or maybe some of the first call-ups. I like to talk about a couple players. So first of all, of course, was the Canadiens' only free agent acquisition on July 1st, and that was Alex Barré-Boulet, the former Tampa Bay Lightning and Seattle Kraken. Played 2 games with the Kraken. It counts. In Syracuse with the Syracuse Crunch last year, he played just 23 games, but 4 goals, 19 points. He's what you can consider an AHL top-line forward. He is a great AHLer. He's a guy that he comes into the lineup, and he slots in on the 4th line in the NHL, maybe 3rd line. Doesn't really look out of place. He's sort of like Jake Evans in a way. He can drive some offense here and there, but he's more of a two-way kind of guy, more defensive forward. I love Alex Barré-Boulet. I'm a big fan of his. I was really happy when Montreal signed him, but unfortunately, it seems like he won't be playing in the lineup for too long. However, again, if someone gets injured, don't be surprised if Barré-Boulet is one of, if not the first, call-ups. And another guy, the guy that everybody, I think, was assuming would make the lineup out of camp until we acquired Laine, Joshua Waugh. Joshua Waugh, of course, looked really, really good with the Canadiens last year. In 23 games, he had 4 goals, 9 points, playing mostly on a third-line role. He had some games in the second line, which he actually looked pretty good on. And in Laval, of course, in 41 games, he had 13 goals, 32 points, played well down there. I could still see maybe Joshua making the lineup. It depends. If they scratch Pezzetta, then yeah, maybe they could. I could even see them maybe doing something where Armia's on the fourth line, and Waugh gets that third line spot with Gallagher and Dvorak. I could potentially see that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they leave him in the AHL for another year. It's probably better for him to play top line in the AHL than third, fourth line minutes in the NHL, at least for this year. You let him develop, hopefully dominate the AHL, and then next season for 25-26, you get him in on a third line role, and boom, he slots right in. You've got Demidov as well, who's probably coming over next season. And you're going to have some good depth next year. I mean, you could even maybe play Waugh on the second line potentially, depending if we still have Laine or not, if the thing works out with him, which I'm assuming it will, so I'm assuming we will have Laine. You got a third line of potentially Waugh, Newhook, and then maybe Armia. Or no, Armia's contract expires this year. Maybe Gallagher you put on that line. Just kind of a small line, though. But either way, I think Joshua could be one of the first call-ups. I think if it's a winger that gets hurt, I think he's the first call-up. If it's a center, Barré-Boulet probably is the first call-up, I'll say that. However, another guy that could also be a center call-up, someone that I think a lot of people expected that Dvorak would be traded, and this guy would make the fourth-line center spot out of camp, especially after the playoffs he had over in the National League, and that is Oliver, not that, yeah, it might have been the National League, but that's Oliver Kapanen. Oliver Kapanen, or Cappy, as you will, or Kappa, who played with Kalpa, kind of fun to say. Kapanen, a guy that I think a lot of Canadiens fans really looked at last year because of his playoffs in the regular season. He played 51 games, 14 goals, 34 assists, 34 points, sorry. But in the playoffs, 13 games with 7 goals and 14 points. He played very well in the National League playoffs. Kapanen, I think, was a guy that a lot of Habs fans slotted in on the fourth line, and I couldn't blame them. I thought he could have as well. However, with the likelihood that Dvorak doesn't get traded and that it's probably Dvorak and Evans on that fourth line, and now that we have Barré-Boulet, I think Kapanen probably spends the year in the AHL, maybe like with Mailloux and Hudson did last year. Maybe he gets a call-up in the last couple games of the year if Laval is clearly in or out and Montreal is clearly in or out. But Kapanen, I think he's probably going to be a constant in the AHL. I would assume third line, maybe second line. But yeah, Barré-Boulet, Barré-Boulet is the first call-up, and then it's probably Kapanen in terms of the center depth. Kapanen, hopefully he makes the NHL as a fourth-line center one day, but given that we have Beck, Mizar, and Michael Hage, who could all be centers with Suzuki, Doc, and Newhook, likelihood of that not too much. Yeah, and on the wings, fourth line, we've got Florian Jacki, so maybe fourth line right wing could fit him in the future, but I don't know. I could do a future Habs lineup, potentially. If you guys want to see that, let me know. And the fourth forward that I'd like to take a look at really quickly is Sean Farrell. Of course, Sean Farrell, who I think a lot of Habs fans expected to be a constant third liner in the future, and he could still potentially get there, but I could see Sean Farrell being a trade piece. Unfortunately, I like Sean Farrell. Big fan of his since his days in college. He played only 9 games with the Habs last year. He had a goal, so he does have at least one NHL goal. One more than I'll ever have. And in Laval last year, he played 47 games with 9 goals and 28 points, so fairly solid. I could expect him to get a call-up if there's enough injuries on the team, which I don't think there really will be this year. Hopefully, it seems like the injury bug, knock on wood, the injury bug has mostly kind of sort of left us alone aside from Doc and Newhook last year. And not counting Laine, of course, because he was on another team entirely when he had those injuries. But Sean Farrell, I could see being a guy that's one of those call-ups where, say, Anderson got hurt and so did Armia. All right, Sean Farrell, you get a call-up, you know. Now, could I expect guys like Owen Beck, maybe Philip Mazar to get called up instead? Maybe, potentially. I mean, I think Mazar, they want to see what we've got out of him. And Owen Beck, I know he got one game last year. He was okay. It was one game, so it was just kind of just go out with the motions, really. Go with the motions. So I could maybe see Owen Beck getting a call-up, but I think Sean Farrell, with him already having a couple games experience, maybe that's what they end up doing with him, is they call him up instead, just give him another kind of a little look. And on the blue line, I already mentioned him, but Logan Mailloux, I think he is someone to look out for, especially in training camp, because he could push Jaden Struble out of that third line right D spot. A lot of people are apparently saying, a lot of the insiders for the Habs are saying that looks like Mailloux could be the one out of camp to make that third line spot with Xhekaj instead of Struble. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that. And of course, the 2022 fifth overall pick, 2023. David Reinbacher, of course, you got to mention him. I assume he spends the year in the AHL, and then next year they give him the call-up. I'm assuming at the end of this season, again, depending on in or out, might get a couple games with the big club. But Reinbacher is a guy to look out for. I think he played well in Laval last year. In Clatton, for example, 35 games, 1 goal, 10 assists, 11 points. He was a -15. With Laval, played better. 11 games played, 2 goals, 5 points with a +6. I think I said -15. I might have said +15. I meant -15 with Clouton. He had a +6 in Laval, which doesn't surprise me. That his offense got better and his overall game got better. He went from being on the second, I think, worst team in Clouton to one of the more mediocre teams in the AHL, at least last year. Talent-wise, probably top 5. And yeah, he looked like a kid. He came over with confidence. He did not look like a guy who needs to really adapt that much to North American ice. So I think a year with Reinbacher in the A could work out a little better than maybe some of us expect. And then the year after, like I said, he probably comes up. Now, whether they immediately pair him with Lane Hutson or they kind of work him up the lineup, that's to be seen. But you know what? Reinbacher, it wouldn't surprise me if he is the one who ends up out of camp on that third line pair. Maybe even on the second pair, they move Savard down to the third. Don't think that would happen, though. But, you know what? If Reinbacher does make the team, I'd love it. If it's Mailloux, hell yeah. If it's Struble, awesome. Yeah. So those are a couple guys that I think you should look out for. Again, these are the defense and goaltending pairings, and these are the forward lines. That is going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, favorite, share, and everything, which includes, but is not limited to, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Links in the description. Please check all those out. Much appreciated. Yeah, thank you guys again for 1,000 subscribers. I will try to come up live again sometime in the next week to fully celebrate with you guys. No guarantees when that'll be, but I'll try and do it sometime. So, yeah, thank you guys so much again for watching. My name is Harry Rice, and I am out. Love you guys. See you guys. Bye, guys. Love you guys. See you guys. Bye.